In this chapter, we'll create even more complex styles and CSS layouts. We'll also explore the pre-designed layouts that come with Dreamweaver and how you can edit them to best suit your design needs. Come on, you can do this! In this chapter, we'll be using a special version of the Nature Photographer site. So let's make the first thing we do here, set up a new site. Let's call this Nature 06, so we know this is for Chapter 6, and it's, again, a very different version of the site, so make sure that you've selected Nature Photographer-CSS from the Chapter 6 folder of your project files. Choose, and now you want the Images folder as your designated Images folder. Click OK, done, and we have a number of files and folders in our Files panel. I want you to start by opening the document called 2column.html. Just double-click on the file name. It'll open in the workspace. And I want to start by talking just a little bit about the CSS box model and how it's used to create layouts like the one you see here. In this lesson, we'll be studying how this page was created by editing one of the CSS layouts that's included in Dreamweaver. We'll also create a layout with 3 columns that we'll create ourselves so you can see how you position div tags side by side to create a layout with 3 or more columns. Along the way, we'll create ID styles for things like these divs, and we'll also redefine the list tag to create a list of links like you see up here, and to create the rollover effect that you can create using CSS. Essentially, when you're using the CSS box model, you're creating a series of boxes, usually using divs, paragraph, or other tags, and you're stacking those one after another on the page. Then you use CSS styles to describe how a browser should display those. So if we remove the styles from this page, and by the way, you can do that in Firefox in the browser, or you can do that right here in Dreamweaver. Just choose View, Style Rendering, and here where it says Display Styles, and you see the check mark, if I uncheck that, then Dreamweaver no longer displays the styles in the workspace. And you can see what I mean by the box model. Each of the elements on this page is in its own separate box. So you see the header and the footer are each separate boxes. And part of why I see these boxes or the outlines of these div tags is because I'm using the Visual Aids option to see the CSS layout outlines and to see the layout box model. If you don't see those, just go here under Visual Aids and make sure that these are both selected so that those borders display. Now, we mentioned this in Chapter 1, but just to remind you, this is a list of links. It's a very common convention on the web these days to format that using the unordered list tag. That means that the formatting was applied using this little icon down here to create an unordered list, but then a series of CSS styles are created to change the way that displays. And if you look at the style sheet that's included with this page, you'll see that I have a navbar style, an unordered list, a link, and a hover link style, all associated to create these links. If you want to put the styles back on, just choose View, Style Rendering, Display Styles. Now let's look at that list just one more time. View, Style Rendering. Notice that there are a number of options here, and we're not going to get this advanced in this Essentials training, but I want to point out that you can create multiple style sheets. For example, creating a style sheet designed for print media or for handheld media, as you see here. And then you can use this style rendering option to display the page in Dreamweaver using each of those styles, which is very helpful if you're trying to do some tweaking and editing on your print CSS style sheet and you want to see how it affects the page. And then you can switch over to the screen media style sheet and see how it affects the page. So throughout this series, I'm working with the screen media type with display styles turned on. And as you saw when I took off the styles, even though this appears to be a page with 2 columns side by side, the underlying code is really a series of div tags stacked one another. During the course of this chapter, we'll work with the styles that are used to create those and look at how this layout uses margins and padding. You see a little padding on the inside of this, and margin here to position this column next to the other. So part of how these 2 columns are created is by creating a very large margin on the left side of the div tag style main content. And you'll see more how that works in a moment.